As we go into the stages that lie beyond the stage of God consciousness and the stage of ascended mastery, the higher bodies start to become very much a part of guiding our life. And so, let us take a look at those bodies. After the mental bodies, the golden lines of light, there is yet again flowing colors that look like more of the aura photography that we take. And that is the spiritual, emotional body. Beyond that, we again have a spiritual, mental body. It's out now a little less than an arm's length from your body. And it is the spiritual, mental body that holds the templates for your life, or your lives, as you may have lived past lives. So it holds the template for those lives. And this body, the spiritual mental body, is in fact the sixth body of man, counting the physical body as the first. Our Russian dolls are getting bigger and bigger. The seventh body of man. The seventh body of man is a most unique body. It is where the information on how to be everything that is in the cosmos is kept. Let me explain. It consists of trillions of fibers of light emanating out from the life force center of man. This life force center, up until May of 2007, was located in the belly button area. Because of the planetary ascension we have been in, it has been moved up to the heart. As I've said, we are living from a much higher level. So, from the life force center, which is full of life force, trillions of light fibers emanate outward throughout all the other six bodies, ending in an egg shape. And this is what is called the luminous egg, or the luminous cocoon of man, because within it is all seven bodies. These light fibers, they in fact determine realities. We have what's called an assemblage point, a tennis ball size ball of light, about an arm's length behind the scapula, right between the shoulder blades, but an arm's length to the back. That's where that ball of light sits foremost, on the edge of the luminous cocoon. Now, when you are in identity consciousness, it is slightly to the right, and it's lower down. As you go into God consciousness, it moves left, maybe about 3 or 4 inches, and it moves upwards. And as you go into ascended mastery levels, it moves up another 4 inches or so and moves over about 6 inches to the right. So it determines the level of consciousness that you're in, or more accurately, the level of consciousness that you're in determines the reality that you assemble through this assemblage point. Those that have done shape-shifting, which is part of those who become trapped in that lower ego identification third phase, where they choose the road of high adventure and showmanship, but they go into the shape-shifting into animals by moving their assemblage point. It's not that hard to do, lower into the band of the beast. This is entirely counterproductive, because the more you assemble lower life forms, the more you in fact assimilate some of their characteristics. It is contrary to the seeking of higher consciousness. But it gives you an indication that you contain in your light fibers all of life. And your assemblage point's position determines your world view. When you go into those ascended levels of God consciousness and ascended mastery, you have no worldviews. You live like a child, moment by moment, experiencing life. So, as we then take a look at now what will transfigure in the emotional bodies as we go into God consciousness. Carillion photography only photographs the lower emotional bodies, but the gas discharge video imaging will photograph the higher bodies. I actually had mine taken when I had just gone into God consciousness. Huge, jagged spikes of my emotional body that reached out well beyond my arm's length. Jagged spikes. You know, in the comic books where somebody does pow and there's a jagged, edged little circle in which the pow is written, like that, with spikes out in all directions. And so a huge explosion happens to the emotional bodies right at the beginning of God consciousness. And you will remember I said that I couldn't feel my emotions. The emotional body had become so large and my mind had become so empty, I had no way of interpreting them. Consecutive God consciousness levels will create more explosions in your emotional body. What does it feel like when it happens? Well, it releases old pent-up emotions. And at the very beginning, when these transitions happen, you may find yourself sobbing and sobbing, or feeling great irritation coming, or great fear coming. It's just that your brain waves are changing. There's a transfiguration happening in your emotional bodies. And the brain waves move into alpha brainwave states. You live in a state of meditation. When you live in those states, livers dump toxins. Kidneys that hold the fear will dump toxins. Lungs that hold pain and grief could start to dump mucus. And so when you have these detox symptoms, with them comes the released emotions. Now, I will just tell you that if you remember that the beginning phase of each of these three big stages is fear, well, the fear that you encounter at the beginning of your God consciousness stage, exacerbated, made worse by the dumping of the fear out of the kidneys, because as you've moved into higher levels, your body cannot hold the toxins. Because remember, your body is becoming spiritualized. It's becoming filled with light. But the transfiguration of the emotional fields plus the dumping of it will exacerbate the fear, which is an emotional response that you feel in the first phase. And there could be momentarily some terror. You could even feel it more than moments. I mean, you could feel it even for a few hours. The terror is making contact with the infinite. It also is a terror of realizing, my brothers and sisters, that you are no one thing. You are not this body. You have lost your identity. Do not be afraid. When you feel that, just know that the deep bliss lies beyond. You might feel like you're in the Gobi Desert, but there's a crystal city of great enlightenment, not an end point, but a temporary stop ahead, which is the second phase of God consciousness, which is bliss. But as these transfigurations happen in the emotional fields, you also will find that during this first phase, they're very heightened. The first phase has fear of loss of awareness. Fear that because you lost your mind, in terms of mind meaning the constant dialogue and thoughts, because you lost your mind, that you won't be able to cope. Let's look at these fears. Fear that you won't be able to cope. Fear that you will, in fact, lose all sense of self-awareness. That will not happen. You always retain self-awareness. All that you lose is self-identity, which is so limiting and the prison bars of consciousness. Self-awareness remains. But there is fear when you find that you are not the body. You are everything. And then there is great fear in expansion. And then the fear pulls you back. And then there's a fear of claustrophobia in the body. Some of you will never have these symptoms. Some of you will have it mildly. The reason you will not have aggravated symptoms for more than an hour or two, my brothers and sisters, in my humble opinion, is that all the masters that have gone before you and done this. There are masters in the flesh now. If you want to meet them, you will need to come to my classes, or you will have to go to those who have stayed in the bliss for the most sake that are in the Far East. And there are more and more of the light workers on this continent entering at least into the I Am presence, which, as you can see, is the middle phase of God consciousness. Certainly not a place to remain, or growth will stop. But the fear of losing identity, the fear of expansion, the fear of claustrophobia, of being confined in the body, the fear of making contact with the infinite, the fear of realizing that you're no one being, you are every being, that you are no thing, does give way, and it will soon, and it gives way to what lies beyond. Again, massive transfigurations happening, and the emotions at this part become even larger. They become more regular, less spiky, but an even larger sphere that is at least as large as your body is long in every direction from you. That's how large the emotional body becomes. At this time you are in the deepest bliss. You have no emotions. This bliss can cause others to be very irritated with you because you have withdrawn from the usual games. They feel ignored. They feel less than. They are used to fear, but now there is no fear. There is just profound bliss. So, I used to have my staff scream in my face at me over nothing. And I would just sit there and watch and feel nothing. My brothers and sisters, that's because of how large the emotional body at this point is. All I felt was bliss. Very little mattered. I had just adopted a little girl as a single mom, and she kept me on the straight and narrow because the one thing I knew is that I could not neglect her needs. And she was but a year or so old, and I needed to change her little diapers, and I needed to make sure that she got fed. It kept me grounded. Now the great fear for people is, wait a minute, I have to run a household and an office. Wait a minute, I'm in charge of a lot of staff at my work. It happens effortlessly. I continued to manage my business. I did have some memory loss in terms of not always remembering things, but you can cope with that by writing things down. But everything presented itself at the right moment. If I was to know something, a document would turn up. If I was to do something, there was a clear sign in my environment. Life ran my business. Life ran my staff, my overhead, my speaking engagements. There was a profound change in the way I looked at life. And that is because it became a place of expanded awareness with very little emotion. It did not occur to me to have emotion until I re-entered the human condition. And in the re-entry of the human condition, that third phase of God consciousness, once again, laughter happened. I didn't have to laugh. My cells laughed with bliss before. Once again, there was humor. Once again, my memories returned. Once again, there was emotion. And this drug of the bliss, the drug of the I am presence, as it is called, has to be overcome. Because there is incredible, beautiful gifts and stages that lie beyond. There is never a point of arrival. And so, if we once again reconnect with our emotions, because our ability to interpret them is now larger. And why is it better? Well, quite simply, because of the fact that at this point, you are thinking with three minds at once. I had a situation where I had a class to teach on healing in Toronto. And somebody came in and wanted to give us a body of information from the hidden realms. I asked the class if they wanted the information, and they said they did. So I allowed them to speak to me, and as they spoke to me, I spoke it to the class. I did this from my higher mind. Well, my lower mind simultaneously was composing a song, and the words as well as the music. My highest mind was observing all of this, observing the states of mind, the states of being of all of my class participants, and laughing with divine humor at the whole comedy of it. All three at once. When I was complete, we had taped the messages that came in from the hidden realms. I also could write down a complete song that I had been composing. And I knew more about my class members because I'd had time to observe them. This three minds at once enables better interpretation of emotions. And we need those emotions reconnected to go to the next level, which is ascended mastery. In ascended mastery, as you can imagine, the mental bodies totally transfigure. And in the second phase, so does the body. Not necessarily, but it should, and I will tell you how. With the first entry into ascended mastery, the mental body implodes into the etheric body. And it becomes one with the etheric body. There's no mental body left. There is no thought left. My books have been written, I write all my books longhand, from a place of total silence. As I'm speaking to you here now, I have learned how to pretend to be thinking. Because when I first started speaking, I sounded robotic. The assemblage point is in a place that Toltec warriors call the place of no pity. It is a place where everything is done automatically, and it is a place where you sound a lot like you're on autopilot, because you are. Not very exciting for you listening to me. My classes, who had been used to a sense of humor, suddenly had none. And, in fact, they had a robotic voice, and they all wondered what had happened to their teacher. I learned how to simulate thought with eye movements, with pauses. But there is no thought as I speak to you. In later phases and stages, as you go even beyond, not even analysis pulls you out of this place of total mindlessness. So I called this first phase of ascended mastery, because I didn't know if anybody else had named it, I called it the phase of the totally silent mind. I had to, soon after, it happened to me on the 5th of January 2005, and soon after I had to stand up and lecture to a group of 1,000 people for an hour. I had to be on a panel with some other panelists. I have no idea what I said. Somebody asked me about something I said afterwards. It was news to me. I had no idea that that was the case. Totally silent mind. Yes, that is fear promoting. But if you trust everything you do and say and write on autopilot without resistance, puts your life into a much higher, more peaceful and incredibly loving place of being. The love I felt when I had a totally silent mind, because my mental body had imploded and transfigured, joining as one with the etheric body. It's beyond what I can explain. Somebody would bring me a rose in my class, and I'd look at the rose and enter into it, fully assimilating its being. The experience was so profound that tears flowed constantly. I could walk outside and hear the communication of trees because I was one with them. I could hear them. Spirals of light came out of some of the creations, like trees and rocks and plants, that I could see if I just focused my eyes a certain way. My brothers and sisters, with the mind silent, life became magical. It was when I entered the second phase, and yet again, a major metamorphosis happened in the mental bodies. The spiritual mental body at that phase imploded into the physical body, bringing the etheric and the mental that had merged with it. In other words, all three the mental bodies, the etheric, the mental, and the spiritual mental, had combined and imploded into the physical itself. When this happened, the deepest bliss was present. The bliss was so deep, it far surpassed what I had felt in previous stages. My love flowed constantly. And some interesting things happened, because this is now the phase in which immortal mastery has to take place. How it takes place, my brothers and sisters, is the song of love and praise and gratitude that sing ever presently in your cells. You lie in your bed at night and you can feel the trembling. Now, you will feel that throughout previous phases as well. But it's a whole new dance of your cells. And during this phase, there is an increase in something that has happened before. And you will find it on heightened states and during peak experiences, but now it's constantly there. There is an excretion, because remember, every second phase we're dealing with this issue of addiction. And usually it's coupled with the endocrine system releasing certain hormones. The power surges of your very first second phase, which is that part of ego identification where we could become addicted to challenge. The power surges that you feel, they're actually endocrine releases. Now we're in our final stage of humankind's evolution, but even in this second phase, there is an endocrine release that will manifest in the soft palate of your mouth as a sweet-tasting, honey-like substance. This phase is where your body needs to become immortal. How do you do that? By going into eternal time. It is only when you allow yourself to go into eternal time that you will fully experience the physicality also evolving, transfiguring into immortality. To go into eternal time is something that we will discuss more, but for right now, it's living in a state of pure meditation. When you are in a state of meditation, you are fully aware of the now. That's how you live it. What I was told to do is for one entire week, I had to turn off all faxes, all phones, all computers, all television, all music. I only watched 2 videos during that week, which is the winged migration of birds, and another one, that the weeping camel, that is also a timeless documentary done in Mongolia. The 2 documentaries were the only 2 that I watched. Other than that, I simply stayed in the moment. When I was tired, I slept. I had stocked up with food. When I was hungry, I ate. When a thought arose, I watched it, but I didn't engage it, just like one does in meditation. But I stayed that way for an entire week. I did nothing other than be. The profound raise in consciousness, deepening of bliss, heightened perception that this caused, brought the body into immortality and permitted me from that point on to be able to deal, as though I deal, with tangible people, with beings in the hidden realms. My interaction with beings in the hidden realms came at that particular stage. Now, it also beckoned at the third phase of ego identification, and that is where many shamans and mystics start to use these allies to give them information. In other words, they form a dependency on them, and they use them for information. So at that point, the master shuns that, because he can get sidetracked. But at this point, there is no ego. And so it is simply a broadening of one's experiences, because you are all things. When you are in your final phase of ascended mastery, there is a very important thing that has to happen at the apex of the human evolution. And that is that once again, the mental bodies that now are completely they're completely expanded. You have total expanded vision. Has to once again register that emotion needs to come back. If it does not, you will fail the testing of power, because power will sift through your fingers like sand. Emotion and expanded perception go hand in hand, and it is that which will allow you to go to the next level which lies beyond. It beckons like a horizon, never ending. Ascension keeps going. And yes, there is life beyond ascension, and it is ours for the taking, to enter the God Kingdom.